And today we are joined by Rapid City Mayor Jason Salamun. I think you might be the first time we've had actually somebody from the city on. So often we're doing state politics on this show. So we do really appreciate you joining the show today. First and foremost, let's just talk about Rapid City broadly. I think you've been at the helm here for a little bit more than a year, about a year and a half now, correct?
Over 2 years.
Oh, wow, over 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And in the 2 years since you've taken over, where do you see Rapid City as where it is today, and where do you see the city heading?
Oh, well, a lot's happened in the last couple of years. As a lot of folks know, we have growth, and with the growth comes opportunities and challenges. So you got to be realistic about both. There are opportunities in terms of national interests, companies that want to come here to do business. And then, the challenges are, how do we keep up with the housing? Because if you have scarcity in housing, it jumps up the value, and that's been a challenging thing for a lot of folks. So all of these present opportunities and challenges. So that's been one of the more unique things. In terms of public safety, we were down about 35 police officers. Now we are close to fully staffed, which is really good. And we have a budget coming up here that will look to add an additional 12 officers. Wild to think about, but you're supposed to have one officer for every 1,000 calls for service. We have about one officer for every 2,100 calls for service, so we have a long ways to go to make sure that we have enough officers for the demand that we have. But there's been so much happening. It's such a great community. I see a lot of hope and optimism with the people here, and you're looking ahead, and everything we're doing now is really with the future in mind, and trying to think about, I always think about this, like, what would citizen Jason want Mayor Jason to do? Because sometimes you can get so caught up in it that you have to take that step back and say, what would I want? Well, I'd want it to be a great place to raise a family. That's like the #1 thing. I think that's why people choose where to live. Whether you have a family or not, you want to live where that's true. So I kind of always keep that on the forefront. How do we make sure that we're doing things that make that possible?
Wow, what's funny is I lost all of my questions before this interview started. Like, I had some questions put on my computer screen and I can't find them, but everything you just said just gave me about 5 questions. So thank you for that. We'll start with public safety. You were talking about that officer to call ratio, and that you're trying to optimize that by adding some more officers right now. So right now, with the ratio that the city is at, how do you see this playing out as far as public safety calls go with the city?
Well, when you're appropriately staffed, you can be more proactive in your policing. So one of the measures of proactive policing is you'll see citations go up and things like that. When people make a call, you want to have good response time. And so as we grow as a community, and what's wild is since 2020 to 2024, the city limits of Rapid City alone grew by over 10,000 people. I mean, that's pretty remarkable when you think about it. And so that also brings that people are wonderful and people are messy at the same time. And so we continually have those calls for service. I think folks here are probably more eager to call when they see something, which is good. And we want to make sure that we are staying, at least in touch with the growth that we have. The reason we got 35 officers behind was for a lot of reasons. We're growing, not recruiting. Nobody wanted to be a police officer. We had to really look at our recruitment and retention package and our starting wage and things of that nature to make sure that we are actually doing what we said we would do. When I ran for mayor, one of my things I said is we need to address public safety. I can't control all aspects of public safety, but we will enforce the law. But public safety begins in the heart and the home. We will enforce the law, and then what happens after that is out of our control with the criminal justice system, the court system, and those sort of things. So to make sure that we are enforcing the law, doing what we said we would do, we have to make sure we're appropriately staffed.
I just spoke with Governor Roden last night up in Sturgis, and he said that you guys had a recent conversation, and this was included in a press release. I'm sure you saw that his office had put out a press release saying that there are talks to possibly bring some of these saturation patrols that he announced in Sioux Falls to the Rapid City area. So this would add some highway patrol personnel to the streets here. It would also include some air resources and the like. Do you think that's needed at this time to help suppress
Well, I'd like
crime
to
here?
talk to the governor more about that. I heard he was doing something in Sioux Falls. He indicated he was working on Sioux Falls. The only thing I said to the governor, it was very briefly on that topic, was, hey, don't forget about Rapid City. We have challenges here as well. Now, what we do and how that's coordinated is really important. It's one thing to saturate, but saturate for what? and what are we tackling. I think that's going to be an important deal. You know, the major driver of most of our crime is substance abuse. No doubt about it, drugs and alcohol abuse are the major driver. So I think that's something that we need to constantly look at, and how do we not only have better accountability, which is important, but also better prevention efforts and treatment efforts. So the thing I brought up to the governor was, Governor, there are tens of millions of dollars in opioid settlement money that the state has, and you dish out a little bit at a time around the state, but I think those dollars should be put to more comprehensive treatment services today, both East River and West River. So I've really advocated to, how do we get millions of dollars to apply towards treatment options to help people get out of addiction? Because that's, if you really want to make a dent in public safety, it's not just about saturation patrols, it's going upstream and saying, how do we help treat people who are struggling? I have people in my life who struggle with substance abuse, a lot of people have. We're seeing it with people with high crime situations, and while there's a lot of reasons why people get into addiction, trauma, things like that, we have to make sure that we're definitely, accountability is huge, but prevention efforts, you know, whether it's talking about it in the schools, telling people what drugs and alcohol will do to you, but really the treatment options to help people level up in their life. So right now we're sitting on millions and millions and millions of dollars. I think, why don't we just do something bold with that rather than something mediocre and actually make positive difference around the state? I do think that, you know, with Sioux Falls and Rapid City already having some form of treatment in their communities, could we really better utilize that and put more horsepower to that and serve more people in the region?
Sounds like you see a treatment gap here that's still not meeting the demands of the substance abuse issues that you're seeing around the city.
Well, yeah, when I tell you that it's driving most of our crime, so what if we got more treatment and people were doing less? Like when you're stealing, it's often because you want money for your drugs. When you're living on the streets, there are plenty of services to help people get out of their difficult situations, but a lot of people choose that because the bottle is more important than anything else in their lives. So to look at treatment options there, I think those things are big. So if you really want to tackle public safety at a big level, and this is true for Governor Roden or anybody who wants to be governor next, look at the substance abuse issue. And if there are resources available, we have opioid settlement money. I'm talking like $80 to $90 million, something around that amount. Those could be put to much better use than they are right now. So that was something I did ask the governor to look into. He told me he would get back to me on that. And I hope he's serious, and I hope that we go with a bold plan. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for bold leadership rooted in strong values. And so hopefully the governor heard that. I look forward to hearing from him in the near future about it.
We spoke, I think the last time I interviewed, well, actually, since then we talked about America 250 and that you want next summer to be a big summer for Rapid City. We can get into that. But this was when former Governor Kristi Noem was outgoing, and you had high remarks about her. Governor Roden was her lieutenant governor. He's now taken over as governor. How has it been running the second biggest city in the state under Governor Roden's leadership?
I would say he's been a steady hand at the wheel. Governor Noem, whether you love her or you don't, she was very responsive to Rapid City, at least during my time. I can't speak for the previous administration, but whenever I needed something, they were helpful, and I appreciated that. I think Governor Roden, took the wheel, kept it between the lines, and I think that's been good. We're staying in a positive direction. I like his opportunity tour. I think that's been really good to see him out and about. Now, what you do with that information is going to be the other key. So you're visiting all these places. I want to see that bold vision and to bring that forward. He's a good man. I will say that I have a great relationship with him. I had a great relationship with him prior to him being governor. That helps now that he is governor. And I will say that when I've reached out to him and to meet or to visit, he's done so, and I appreciate that responsiveness. That's really the big thing, is when your leaders of your communities can reach out to your leaders in your state, and you can work together through these opportunities and challenges. And so certainly appreciated that about him.
2026 governor race is already shaping up. It's a pretty hefty Republican primary. There is a phone going off right now. That's my phone. It's off camera. Nobody's here to touch it. So
mine buzzes all of the time, but that was not me.
You know what's funny? I'm so unpopular. This almost never happens. It's never a problem. They're like, silence your phones. I'm like, nobody ever calls me. This won't be a problem. But anyways, so 2026, the election is heating up. We already see a few candidates who've thrown their hat in the ring. We have Congressman Dusty Johnson, South Dakota House Speaker John Hanson, Aberdeen businessman Toby Doden. I'm curious if you plan to, and you don't have to name who, but if you plan to endorse one of these candidates, and if so, what you hope to see out of the next governor of South Dakota.
You know what's interesting is I have relationships with almost everyone there. One of them I haven't met yet, so it's hard for me to form an opinion other than what I've seen, online or whatever the case may be. So when you know these folks, you kind of know their strengths and weaknesses. I have my strengths and weaknesses as well. Here's what I'm going to ask for, that anybody who wants to be the Republican primary challenger is going to need to make sure Rapid City is on their radar. If you look at the 2024 Republican primary, I believe more Republicans voted in Rapid City than Sioux Falls or Pennington County than Minnehaha County. So it would be foolish to overlook Rapid City. And sometimes I think statewide offices, they throw a bone every once in a while to our area. But I would say any governor who's serious about leading the state and getting the nod for that nomination must go through Rapid City. It would be a foolish thing to do. And if you're going through Rapid City, I would certainly hope, I would hope all of them would want to visit with me about the issues facing our community and really around our state. I care greatly about the whole state, because if Rapid City does well, the entire state does well. I know what we bring to the state economy and what we mean for this great state of South Dakota. So will I endorse? I'm not sure. I've been thinking about that, because typically I wouldn't do that for that race, mainly because I have to work with whoever wins. But at the same time, I'm kind of at the phase of, midway through my term as mayor. So I'm thinking about, well, what do we need moving forward? What kind of leadership do we need moving forward? And again, I'm looking for bold vision rooted in strong values. So I'm going to see who has the bold vision, but also who has a value. So for me, values are number one. Those are the things that are closed-handed, things you will not compromise on. But that doesn't mean you don't have a vision for the future. It doesn't mean status quo is okay. I want to see what the vision is for the state. I don't think all of them have articulated that just yet. It's pretty early. I mean, the primary is in June, the general is in November of 26. So as I hear the vision, and I believe who has the best vision for South Dakota and how it impacts Rapid City, I may or may not weigh in, but I'm happy to meet with any of them, met with them. And so I don't believe Governor Roden has actually thrown his hat in the race yet. So right now we only have 3. And I look forward, to connecting with them more. I have a better relationship with Dusty Johnson. I've just known him a lot longer. This last year I got to know John Hanson, working on Amendment G stuff and things like that. I respect him. And Mr. Doden, I have not met yet, but respect the business background, but would like to know more about, I've heard, for example, some of the property tax stuff, and I want to talk about property taxes because they should be relieved. But I also want to see what the plan is to offset that. Is it more sales tax or use tax that the visitors can help? That's what I would recommend, or some form of that coming through. And we're working on that as a city to say, hey, here's a recommendation we would make. We agree property tax values need to come down. In fact, Rapid City has one of the lowest municipal mill rates in the whole state, that's the rate that really takes the value of your property times your mill levy rate. Will equal your property taxes. Well, ours is one of the lowest in the state. So our dependency is not as strong as other communities, but it's still important. It does impact our budget to a great deal. It basically pays for our police department. So I'm looking at how do I make sure that I offset that, not just me, but the schools, the counties, and the jurisdictions. How do we offset that? Those are the kind of conversations.
So the proposals that will probably have your ear the most are these proposals to identify another revenue stream, be it maybe a sales tax increase or the like, that could then supplement relieving those property taxes.
Anyone can get elected saying, I want to reduce your property taxes. Everybody's like, yeah, let's do that. But you have to be realistic, say, where's that going to come from? Either you're cutting services, and by the way, the state doesn't really live off property taxes. That is school districts, county governments, city governments. And I agree, property taxes relief. I actually would like to help with that because when I have an 80-year-old woman tell me she's getting priced out of her home because of property taxes, I think that's a problem. But I would say let's be realistic. We have 3.9 million visitors who visit here each year. How do we leverage that? Perhaps to help make up the difference. We could lower the burden on the citizens of Rapid City and South Dakota, but also share that with the millions of people who visit here each year. I think that's our best opportunity. How does that look? And the specifics behind that are things we're talking about. So when we're having that, I believe that's going to be a big campaign issue. It'll be a big issue in the legislative session. Everybody's going to want to do something. Let's make sure we're being wise, not reckless. Let's make sure that we don't just make big promises without actual plans. And so, because there's always a price to be paid. Thomas Sowell, a great economist, says there are no solutions, only trade-offs. So what are those trade-offs? What are we willing to do to solve this problem? A price has to be paid somewhere else. Where's that going to be? Let's have that conversation. I think it's a healthy one to have, and I look forward to having that. And whoever has, the best plan for South Dakota, first of all, will they earn my vote? So I'm looking at who am I going to vote for, and will I make that public? We'll see.
Yeah. Do you have any concerns with some of the proposals that you have heard about reducing these property taxes, especially if there is no supplemental tax to pay for a lot of these county and city services, schools, everything that you've mentioned?
I haven't paid too close attention to everybody's race, but just generally speaking, what I hear is...
Or this is just even at the legislature, because they've got their task force this summer.
I just see a lot of slogans, but I don't see a lot of plans. Not all those plans what I like either, but I think Governor Roden just weighed in on a transaction tax or something.
He's proposed allowing counties to enact their own half-a-cent sales tax, and then to have all that money go to a property tax relief fund, and then I think that money would spill. Now this part, I'm going off memory here, but I think it's so the half cent would go into the property tax relief fund. If that funds all the services, I think it would spill into some other services.
Yeah. So ignoring the cities in that is a mistake. So I think you have to look at all those impacted by that, and how does that look at? I think half cent for the county I would agree with. Either that or a liquor tax for their public safety, something like that would be how you would offset that. So I think that's a good discussion, a good starting point for that discussion.
But add individual cities to have their own.
And I want to hear what the plan is for the school districts too. I think it's just important to have a more comprehensive discussion on that. Right now we have a 3% tax cap that the legislature passed last year, so we're working within that, and we can. We're getting more aggressive in how do we get more year-round tourism, more sales tax revenue into the city to help offset that. So that's why that's been a major focus of mine. Okay, how do I get, we have millions of people that come here each year. Instead of staying one night, how do we get them to stay two and spend more money? And that way we can make sure we're addressing, the deficit that we're going to have with the property tax cap, which is needed. I agree with it. So what do? Well, we got to make sure that we're bringing in, more people. That's the only way. More people spending money in the city limits of Rapid City is our best answer to that. And so that's stuff I think at the state level we certainly need to talk about, and having serious discussions around that will be good. So I appreciate that that's the intention of a lot of folks, but there are very few I think there's partial plans, but I'm not sure there's comprehensive plans just yet. I haven't seen one, at least.
As far as Rapid City goes, what would you like to see the city do in order to attract people to stay here longer? You say you want people who come here on vacation or whatever to actually stay here longer. What do you think the city needs in order to get those people to commit to longer stays when they're here?
Well, something we recently announced was our efforts to bring in a new sports complex to Rapid City to hold indoor tournaments and events throughout the year. So when you are in November, you could have basketball tournaments, and that means you have families coming here, staying for more than one day because of tournaments. And if we can get more of that than what we have right now, we've turned things away because there's only so much room at the monument. And a lot of things happen at the monument people don't even know. I had an email, somebody saying, well, the monument's sitting empty right now. Literally, when I got that email, we had the National Trampoline and Tumbling Championship here. Now, you may not have known it, but it's there, and they're doing amazing things. I think 1,000 people showed up for that, just to compete in that alone. So, plus their families. So I think those things are important that we bring those to the community. So I'm looking at, okay, how do we how do we have better experiences all year round? We know in the summertime, here we're at the tail end of summer. We've had great visitors coming through. We want to be welcoming to them, but we also know that we need to extend that year round. And the way you do that year round is having more indoor activities that supplement your outdoor activities. And so things like sports complexes or other things that improve the quality of life. And our sunshine index is really good here, even though it's cold in the winter, we do get a lot of sunshine. I think those things help, but it's part of the experience. You have all 4 seasons here, although sometimes fall just lasts a few weeks, but at least we get it. But this is an amazing place. All year round, it's really amazing. I love it here in the summertime, but how do we better leverage the off season? That's really been a focus, is to say, what can we do in the off season? And that's where things like the sports complex come in.
So that's talking about events. I'm curious if there's any businesses that you'd like to see come to Rapid City. I laugh because I grew up in Southern California and I went to college in Montana. So in Montana, it's the kind of place where at least when I was there, and I was in this tiny little city called Dillon, and I remember people would describe a town based on the businesses it had, which is so weird as a kid from the LA suburbs, to be like, oh, it has a Costco. Yeah. It's like anywhere you threw a rock in California, you hit like 9 Costcos, right? So it was always funny to hear people describe towns that way. But then when you do live out in these areas long enough, you realize that that's very important to people to have different businesses, whether it's Costco or In-N-Out Burger or whatever it may be. So are there any, do you have any targets, any businesses that you're going, look, we need to get one of these here, and we got to know what's on the mayor's mind there?
Well, let me tell you, we're always having conversations with businesses coming here. Sometimes they just come to us, and through Elevate Rapid City or the Governor's Office of Economic Development, so they'll go to them, and then they want to meet and I always tell them, I love selling Rapid City. If you need me to do that, we've recently announced that Chick-fil-A, Panda Express, Chipotle, Les Schwab Tire are coming in. That Chick-fil-A is the #1 request I get. By far away, I talk to thousands of people. By far and away, it's #1. #2 would be Costco. And we've certainly had conversations with Costco. I think we're still a few years out. We will keep working on that. But to have more grocery stores, warehouse clubs, department stores, those things, are important because, and why that matters is we are a hub for a 5-state region. And so you have a lot of, say, people that live in rural communities that make their trip to Rapid City to stock up. And I think that's an important deal. Or that might be their whole reason just to come into towns because they want the chicken sandwich. And while they're here, what else are they going to do? I think that's a big deal. We also are a healthcare hub for a 5-state region. So you will see healthcare is a major economic driver for our community. You'll see more efforts in the next year on that. All of those things are critical because you're coming here to get care, you're coming here to do your shopping, you're coming here for your entertainment, whatever the case may be. All of those things have to work together. But we also have not just retailers, but we talk to manufacturers, technology companies, things like that want to come here. They like what's going on here because we produce such great talent at the South Dakota School of Mines, Western Dakota Tech, Black Hills State. So how do we make sure we leverage that and bring that in as well? Because if you're able to keep more of the talent that you're developing, then that's more people that are living here. That's what gets the attention of a Costco. When you're over 100,000 people, that'll get your attention of a Costco.
If we can't get Costco, just see if they can give us the cafeteria. Just say, we'll settle. Right? Yeah, we'll settle. We'll settle.
Cheap hot dogs.
Maybe a rotisserie chicken rack, and then we're
tell you, I bought a Costco membership. I was in Colorado some time ago, bought a Costco membership. So every time I talk to a representative from Costco, I make sure I bust that out. They have like 2,000 or 3,000 memberships already in their area here. And so we kind of know what they look for, like their target market is. And
so people have memberships here. Do they drive down to Denver? Like where are they?
A lot of times people that moved here or they order online. I think there's a lot of that. We have a lot of military in this area. A lot of people have moved into this area from other places. Some travel to other communities, I'm sure, but we want to make sure that we are as attractive as we can be. So trust me, we are always having those conversations. Last time I talked to them, I remember hearing the phrase, hey, yeah, it's between you and like the 10th location in Dallas, stuff like that. We will constantly make our pitch. The market here is good. I think they like that. They like to see a particular average weekly wage go up. So I think we have efforts to work on to make sure we're attracting high-paying jobs. If you do that, everything else will come. Retail follows rooftops, so we need more housing, single-family housing. We need more people being able to afford those housing, and then you'll have those other things that you want. But we're already seeing interest. I'm just going to tell you, it's one. Just last week, some developers came to town that were throwing names at me of who they represent. I was like, wow, that's a pretty big deal. They were told by their company to come here and scout, and so those things happen all the time. I love promoting that. That's why we've made progress on things. We'll continue to work on it.
All right, we'll finish things here because you are talking about housing, and I think that for young people, that's really a concern of theirs. And we are hearing it now with older generations as their property taxes rise, but there's also just a really, I think, a stiff entry point now for young people when it comes to getting that down payment together, whatever it may be, because housing has gotten expensive. How do you think the city needs to move forward on that issue to make things more affordable for people?
Well, the only thing the city can really do is make sure that we're being responsive to builders and developers to make sure that process is quicker. And also, we just announced an annexation to the east towards the airport, not Rapid Valley, but just in some rural land. That's some good flat level land. That's a lot easier to develop on than, say, some of our topographical challenges that we have in the city, with hills and things like that.
As you head west?
As you head west, which is beautiful, but it's also really difficult to build on. I think we need to encourage, more development that are not necessarily. You need housing of all types, believe it or not. You need things that are starter home, and you also need premium home, and you kind of have middle income home. Well, if you don't have enough premium homes, they come into the middle income. If you don't have enough starter homes, they try to afford more house than they can afford. And so it squeezes this inventory, which shoots up the price. So what you need is more inventory across the board, especially on all ends. And I think maybe our expectations, my first house I lived in up until 2015, mostly my kids were raised in it. We didn't have a garage, but a lot of people are like, I won't buy a house unless there's a garage. And I'm like, well, that's what I started with. I started with a split foyer built in the late 70s, and I was grateful to have it. I think a lot of folks need to set our expectations a little bit differently, and that's true with builders too. I would say if the city is going to give any incentive or whatever, I think it should be towards the type of housing that we want to see. We have plenty of multifamily or apartments. We need more single family units, and so it's really a supply and demand issue. If you get more supply, and if the interest rates go down, which I can't control, but if they go down with more supply, that's a winning formula for a first-time home buyer.
Final question:
Yeah.
where do you see yourself when your mayorship comes to an end? Do you have any interest in running for governor, congressional seats, anything to the like, state legislature?
I'm praying about that right now, actually, because, I'll have to decide here in the next year or so whether I'm running again. I've said I'm going to take this a term at a time. I mean it. It's a big undertaking, and it's been an honor to be mayor. But I also recognize that it's temporary. I'm a steward, and I'm accountable. Now the question is, do I continue in public service or go do something else, with my life? That's a big question. A lot of folks, I heard a lot of rumors I was running for governor or senator or House this go around in 26. And I'm like, dude, I got like $2,000 in my campaign account. I don't think that's enough to win those races. But maybe down the road, I won't rule it out. It's right now. I think we're going to have a handful of options for governor. I think there are already options here at the House that I think are good. I know Senator Rounds is running again for Senate. Marty Jackley, at least I think he's announced.
He put in for Congress.
Yeah. And I have a lot of respect for him. So the fact is, maybe down the road, but who's to say? You don't see a lot of Rapid City people getting to the state level of public service. It doesn't happen a lot. But never say never. But I also think my purpose is deeper than a position. Everybody's wondering what position, but it's more about what your purpose is. and is that position aligned with that purpose? So I think there's seasons in our life. Like right now, I'm mayor. I won't be mayor forever. I don't find my identity in this job. While I'm here, I'm going to do the best I can for the people of Rapid City. This is my hometown. I raised my children here. My parents are here. My grandmother's here. I love it here. Graduated high school here. Came back here after the Air Force. Absolutely love it. You know, I think if you'd have asked me 25 years ago if I was going to be mayor of Rapid City, I would have thought that was funny. So, so we'll see, man. I'm praying just about whether to run again for mayor or not. That's a big deal. So, and I think if whether I do or don't, I think in about a year or so I'll probably announce that, and or who knows? I don't know, man.
You said something that okay, I gotta ask you one more thing, because you said something that you don't find your identity in this. Do you think too many politicians, they find their identity in the title that they're able to achieve?
Politicians, but all walks of life. I've been a business executive. I see people do that all of the time. And when you find your identity in what you do, like what you do is important, but who you are is even greater. So, you know, for me, I make no bones about what I'm about. You know, my faith leads me. I love my family. I've been blessed to serve in business and ministry and military, now public service. So I've been able to do a lot of different things in life. So my life's an adventure. And my scorecard might be different than other people's scorecards. You know, I do believe I'm called to leadership of some form or fashion. And whether it's public service or not, I think I would urge all those, whatever you're doing, your identity is deeper than your position. And I think that people who have that mixed up find themselves more unhappy, and their emotions ride a wave of people love me, people hate me, people love me, people hate me. If you know who you are and you stay true to your values, no matter what you're doing, you might have big titles, you may not. But frankly, some of the greatest people I know that I've ever met, that I respect the most, didn't have big titles. They were faithful people who did things the right way, and they had peace and contentment in their lives, and they did what the good Lord put them here to do. So that's what I think about. So for me, don't rule out public service. I think it's important. It's not ultimate, but it is important. And you know, if I have that opportunity, I might pursue that. But otherwise, you know, you never know where the wind will blow.
All right. Rapid City Mayor Jason Salamun, again, thank you so much for joining us, and that's going to do it.